This is 5 on 20 News, where the news is fresh, but the newscasters are fresher, with Alex Kack.
And Jeff Wemmer.
Coming to you live from our studio in downtown Tucson. First, the local headlines.
Yes. Today is Law Enforcement Appreciation Day. Concerns of police survivors or cops have several suggestions for ways you can show your police officer love. You could change your profile picture on social media, wear blue clothing, replace your house lights with blue bulbs, send a card or letter to your local police department, or cajole your children into doing the same. Just make sure to remind your children to not wear a hood or be black when approaching a law enforcement officer.
Winter break is over for students at Pueblo Magnet High School, but the school isn't quite how they left it. Last week, vandals broke into the building and wrought havoc. Windows were smashed, display cases were destroyed and emptied of their memorabilia, paint was spilled on the floor, and fires were started in 2 of the science classrooms. The vandals also ran water in the gym, causing the wood court to buckle in several places. Cleanup efforts are ongoing, and only 8 of the 20 impacted classrooms were shut down today. Tomorrow's basketball game, however, will be postponed or relocated. The vandals remain at large, and if you have any information related to the crime, please call 88-CRIME.
Yesterday was the 6-year anniversary of the mass shooting in Tucson that left 6 dead and 13 wounded, including former Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords. And Tucson has not forgotten the tragedy of that day. Mayor Jonathan Rothschild rang a bell for each victim at the Central Fire Station. Tucson January 8 Memorial Foundation held an event at High Corbett Field. Hundreds donned white shirts and formed a human embrace symbol. The foundation has plans to create a permanent memorial of the event at the old Pima County Courthouse, and Representative Martha McSally has formally proposed a bill that would make Tucson January 8 Memorial into a national monument. If the bill passes, then the National Park Service would be able to hold events on the grounds parking lot. McSally said that the memorial serves to remember the attack was an assault on our democracy, and it's time for recognition.
Arizona Representative Raul Grijalva says that President Obama will not designate an area near the Grand Canyon as a national monument after all. Grijalva says the White House Council on Environmental Quality told him about the reversal last week. Obama was supposed to have preserved the land along with 2 other spots in Utah and Nevada. It was a last-minute way to secure his legacy as an environmentally friendly president. His move was supported by the Navajo Nation, who says that the land sits on ancestral grounds once used for prayers and figures into many Navajo cultural stories. But the land has always been ripe with natural resources, which have been targeted by large businesses. Obama hoped to designate the land in order to keep it out of the hands of Donald Trump, who has vowed to open vast stretches of public land for private business to explore for natural resources. In related news, congressional Republicans hope to designate Trump Tower as a national monument sometime in 2017.
And here's a weird reversal of the last story. It looks like the Navajo Nation will also suffer if coal mines close, as the Navajo generating station in Page, Arizona is looking to close this year and cost the nation about 2,400 jobs in the community. Page Mayor Bill Dyack said that the lower natural gas prices and pollution regulations caused the plant to shut down. The owners of the plant, which include the Salt River Project, have a lease until 2044 and agreed to pay the Navajo Nation about $42 million per year while the plant operates. It's unclear how the plant closing will affect the payment structure. While no date is set, the plant is set to close sometime over the next several years. Local authorities have been tasked to create local job opportunities and infrastructure to support the community when the plant does eventually close. Left-wing activists say that they're completely confused about who to root for in this situation. Now, in national and international news.
The CIA, FBI, and NSA released their joint report on possible Russian interference in the presidential election. The report, which is more fluff-filled than an overdue book report, points a very accusatory finger at Vladimir Putin, but is light in terms of evidence. The report absolves Russia of interfering in vote tallying and claims it was Russian agents who leaked the DNC emails to WikiLeaks, but offers no evidence supporting either assertion. Most of the report is dedicated to listing the reasons that Putin himself likes Trump more than Clinton, and accusing the Russian news channel RT of undermining faith in the U.S. government by giving Occupy Wall Street sympathetic coverage and hosting a debate between third-party presidential candidates. Blame it on my 80s nostalgia, but chalking up any form of dissent as foreign propaganda sounds like something the U.S. would accuse Russia of doing.
Donald Trump's incoming chief of staff says that Trump no longer denies that Russia ordered a cyber attack on the U.S. during election season. On Fox News Sunday, Chief of Staff Reince Priebus said that Trump accepted the findings from the intelligence community, who met with Trump on Friday to discuss the attacks. The FBI, CIA, and the NSA now all agree that the hacking of the DNC, along with the spread of propaganda, came from Russia, and claim that they have evidence that President Vladimir Putin actively ordered the attacks. While Priebus admitted the Russian links, he disagreed that the cyber attacks had any effect on the election. Critics say the DNC leaks, along with the leaks of Clinton aide John Podesta, helped turn public opinion against Clinton and could have played a role in the election results. Before Friday, Trump denied Russia's involvement and continually repeated that the hacking did not impact the election, chalking this opinion up to the opposition being sore losers. Republican Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham agreed that they didn't think the hacks affected the election, but said it's troubling to the legitimacy of future elections. The two senators have repeatedly condemned Russia for the attacks and have urged a harsh response. President Obama echoed the senators in an interview with the ABC News on Sunday, saying that we have to remember we're all on the same team and cannot let Russia get away with the hacking. Until recently, Trump was doubtful of the intelligence community, citing the failure of intelligence surrounding the Iraq War as an example of how they bungle information. But on Friday, Trump conceded that the intelligence does appear to point to Russia, although he stopped short of fully endorsing their report. He tweeted on Friday that he is a, quote, big fan of the intelligence community and hoped to catch their comeback tour next spring.
He's not even president yet, but that isn't stopping Donald Trump from breaking campaign promises. The Trump transition team is already eyeing taxpayer money to cover the cost of the border wall. According to Trump, every time he guaranteed Mexico would pay for the wall, which he, and he alone, is now calling the Great Wall, he actually meant Mexico would pay for it later. Getting Mexico to pay for a wall they didn't ask for may be as difficult as getting Trump to pay for plumbing work he did ask for. Congress could decide as soon as April whether or not taxpayers will cover the costs to start work on the wall that, frankly, nobody wants.
A Delaware-sized chunk of ice is at risk of breaking away from the Antarctic Peninsula in the coming months. This is due to a rapidly growing crack in the Larsen C ice shelf. The crack has extended 11 miles since the beginning of December, after already extending 13 earlier this year. Once the cracks extend another 12 miles, 2,000 square miles of ice will go for a float. Adrian Luckman, head of Project Midas, told the BBC, "If it doesn't go in the next few months, I'll be amazed." Some expect the ice chunk to wash up on the White House lawn January 20th to protest Trump's pick for the head of the EPA.
And it looks like the U.S. is eager to defrost the Cold War casserole. Hundreds of tanks, Humvees, as well as 3,500 U.S. troops have been landing in the German city of Bremerhaven over the weekend. From there, the deployment will spread across Eastern Europe to protect against a potential Russian invasion. The official name of this pre-fight flex-off is called Operation Atlantic Resolve. Putin has gone on record saying it's stupid and unrealistic to think that Russia would ever attack anyone. But Crimea used to think it was stupid and unrealistic to think they'd ever stop being a part of the Ukraine.
Donald Trump's son-in-law and recently named senior advisor, Jared Kushner, has reportedly been trying to close a massive real estate deal with a Chinese business. This comes the same week that confirmation hearings begin for Trump's cabinet appointments, which have raised additional questions of conflicts of interest. The New York Times reported that Kushner was nearing an agreement on a joint venture with the Angbang Insurance Group, a Chinese company tight with the Chinese government. The joint venture involves redeveloping 666 Fifth Avenue, an address so perfect that it would be too on the nose if we made it up. The Times says that the deal with Angbang began about 6 months ago, with Kushner meeting with the CEO in November to discuss terms. The deal further raised concerns over conflicts of interest related to Kushner, who runs his family business that has done about $7 billion worth of real estate deals in its history. Today, Kushner was named senior advisor under Trump and now will be subject to financial disclosures that will give a clearer light into possible conflicts of interest. Kushner's lawyers said that he would divest, quote, substantial assets, but did not include the 666 Fifth Avenue property. Kushner has already unofficially been advising Trump, recently helping to choose ex-Goldman Sachs lawyer Gary Cohn as chief economic advisor. He also advised Trump to wear his suit 7 times too big to pay homage to Talking Heads era David Byrne. Look at that.
Iran's ex-president Akbar Hashemi Rafsanjani died over the weekend at age 82. Rafsanjani, who is known to be one of the country's foremost progressive thinkers, served as president from 1989 to 1997, years when Iran opened itself up more to the world. Since serving as president, he continually lobbied for more freedoms in Iran, especially during the era of protests coinciding with the Arab Spring movement in 2009. Rafsanjani served as a mentor to Iran's current president, Hassan Rouhani, another leader seen as moving Iran more in line with the rest of the world. Rafsanjani was a leader during the Iranian Revolution in 1979, but broke away from Iran's leader, the Ayatollah Khomeini, who had much more hardline views. Since then, he served as a moderating influence to the more extreme Ayatollah and his military group, the Revolutionary Guard. He was also a key player in the country's nuclear program, which has been condemned by the U.S., and who made a deal with Iran last year to suspend the program temporarily. As president, Rafsanjani argued for more liberal economic policies and improved infrastructure. Some Iranians worry that the reformist movement may suffer because of his absence, especially with the arrival of Donald Trump, who has promised to throw out the nuclear agreement. Fortunately for the Iranians, Trump will likely confuse Iran for Iraq and lead us into war with the country, which 75% of Americans probably won't notice anyway.
For at least the 300th straight year in a row, Black Americans were more likely to be killed by police than any other race, according to a report by The Guardian. Black males aged 15 to 34 were 9 times more likely to be killed by law enforcement than all other groups combined last year. However, on a slightly more positive note, overall killings by police did decrease by almost 100% for the year, for the year. However, the report says some deaths from 2015 may not have been counted in time, so don't start celebrating just yet. While the numbers improved, law enforcement still killed twice the number of justifiable homicides, according to the FBI. Upon hearing the report, the ACLA doubled down on its criticism of incoming Attorney General Jeff Sessions, who has been shown to be hostile towards groups like Black Lives Matter. They are also concerned about incoming President Donald Trump, as he has advertised himself as being a tough-on-crime candidate, which historically means putting more Black people behind bars. The ACLU urged lawmakers to bring up the issue of police killings at the confirmation hearing of Sessions held this week. Tucked into the report was the troubling fact that the police killed many more Native Americans than last week, although the numbers were much smaller due to population numbers. 24 Native Americans were killed by law enforcement in 2016 compared to 13 in 2015, almost a 50% increase. Alaska, Washington, D.C., New Mexico, and Oklahoma had the highest rate of police killings in the U.S., with Alaska leading by far. New Mexico, in particular, has come under fire for killings in Albuquerque last year, prompting the state's governor to order a study on how to decrease further incidents. The study's first recommendation was for police to stop shooting Black people.
A truck plowed into soldiers in Jerusalem on Sunday, killing 4 and injuring at least 10. The driver was killed by Israeli police and was identified as 28-year-old Fadi Kunbar. 9 people were arrested in connection with the attack, including 5 of Kunbar's family members. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says that the attacker might be an ISIS sympathizer, but provided no evidence to back up his claim. An Israeli official says that the country is considering using administrative detention against suspected ISIS sympathizers. Although the Israeli police spokesman says that there are no active ISIS cells in Israel, More likely, Netanyahu is making the claim in order to capture militants under the ISIS name to curry favor with the United States, who will then back the military plan further. The U.S. State Department condemned the attack, saying there's no justification for these brutal and senseless attacks. Hamas, the Palestinian group who opposes Israel, praised the attack, calling the driver heroic and a normal response to the Israeli occupation. Hamas opposes Israeli settlements that they claim infringe on Palestinian land. Last week, when the UN condemned Israel for continuing to build settlements, Donald Trump criticized the UN and told Netanyahu to hold on until he came to power, when they sit hand in hand and watch the Middle East crumble into radiated fairy dust.
Venezuela's government announced a 50% hike in the minimum wage as the country tries to battle a worsening inflation crisis. President Nicolas Maduro says that the raise will help protect jobs and incomes, but opponents say that the move risks increasing the crisis. Venezuela's currency has experienced inflation rates of 1,600%, the highest in the world. The inflation has made Venezuela's currency, the bolivar, near worthless with the sky-high rates. Photos have surfaced of Venezuelans carrying sacks of money to the grocery store to buy staple items, and much of the country is suffering from food shortages and rationing. Critics of the Maduro government say that this is the natural outcome of the failed socialist policies of the current regime and of Maduro's predecessor, Hugo Chavez. Chavez rose to power on a platform to help the rural poor and investing in education and health programs for the poor. However, his iron-fisted government style alienated businesses within the country and left the government with little in the way of tax revenue. When the price of oil dropped sharply last year, the country fell into a massive depression as revenues and other government income further fell. The minimum wage hike hopes to stave off the devastating effects of hyperinflation. Wages will rise to about 40 bolivars, or $60 per month for citizens. This is the fifth increase in 1 year for the minimum wage, with no relief seen from furthering inflation. Maduro blames the country's wealthy elite for sabotaging the Venezuelan economy. The wealthy elite blames the inflation on the central bank continuing to print new money. The central bank blames Obama because the internet. Thanks, Obama.
This was Alex Kack
And Jeff Weber
for 5 on 20 News. Next up, Sean sees dead people.
The fear of death is the most unjustified of all fears, for there's no risk of accident for someone who's dead. Albert Einstein said that. Today on Sean Sees Dead People, science rules, and so does innovation. Chemistry and biology, mathematics and psychology. I'm not very scientific, but let's go anyway. On this day, in 1799, Italian scientist or mathematician Maria Gaetana Agnesi died at the age of 80. Agnesi was the first woman in history to write a mathematics handbook and to be appointed as a mathematics professor at a university. According to Wikipedia, she is credited with writing the first book discussing both differential and integral calculus and was a member of the faculty at the University of Bologna. According to Dirk Jan Struik, the Dutch male mathematician and theorist, Agnesi was the first important woman mathematician since Hypatia of Alexandria. Agnesi's most highly regarded work was the work titled Analytical Institutions for the Use of Italian Youth. This work aimed to give a systematic illustration of the different results and theorems of infinitesimal calculus, which I know nothing about. Also, something about a curve, and the curve was a witch, which had its own Google gimmick once. Agnesi's father was also a reputable mathematician, and when he became ill, she was appointed by Pope Benedict XIV to the chair of mathematics and natural philosophy and physics at Bologna, though she never served, and instead opted for a life of community service. While rather old, 80 years old, Maria died while living in a poorhouse. She spent her latter years dedicated to serving the poor and unfortunate, and was buried in a mass grave with 15 other bodies. On this day, in 1918, French scientist and inventor Charles-Émile Raynaud died of pulmonary edema, or excess fluid in the lungs. He was 73 when he died. Raynaud is credited with creating the first projected cartoons. Two of his inventions would determine the history of the motion picture arts, the first being the praxinoscope. This device was the descendant of the zoetrope, but it improved upon it by including mirrors, which made for a more stable viewing experience of the rapidly moving images in contrast with the zoetrope. The second of Raynaud's inventions was the théâtre optique. Based on his previous design, this device also used mirrors. The optic theater, however, is the first known instance of the use of perforated film. So you know those little sprockets on the edges of a film strip? That's what I'm talking about. He also created many adorable cartoons throughout his life. And on this day in 1998, Kenichi Fukui, the Japanese chemist, Nobel Prize winner, and first Asian to receive a Nobel Prize in chemistry, died at the age of 79. The prize was awarded because of Fukui's investigations into the mechanisms of chemical reactions. It turns out that chemistry is just physics after all. Fukui's prize-winning work focused on the role of frontier orbitals in chemical reactions, specifically that molecules, through quantum mechanics, share loosely bonded electrons. Of the two frontier orbitals, there is the highest occupied molecular orbital, or HOMO, and the lowest unoccupied molecular orbital, LUMO. Something about symmetry and the total number of 4q plus 2 times s and 4r times a yada yada yada. Fukui's cause of death is unspecified. And on this day, in 2012, William Roll, psychologist and parapsychologist, died at the age of 85. Parapsychology, for those in the dark, is usually considered a pseudoscience. It is a field of study concerned with the investigation of paranormal and psychic phenomenon, which include telepathy, precognition, clairvoyance, psychokinesis, near-death experiences, reincarnation, apparitional experiences, and other paranormal claims. Dr. William G. Roll had a sincere belief in poltergeist activities and coined the term spontaneous psychokinesis, or recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. You know how sometimes when you walk into the kitchen and all of the cabinets are open? That's recurrent spontaneous psychokinesis. Dr. Roll had many experiences with poltergeists and was a celebrated academic despite the many skeptics that spoke out against his theories. He died a normal death in a nursing home. No surprise there. Thank you. That's all I have for today. See you next week. Sean Sue's Dead People.